The vanishing train. Detective Michael Grayson wasn't a superstitious man. He didn't buy into ghost stories or urban legends. But when the 11:45 commuter train vanished without a trace last Tuesday, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a case of a derailed locomotive or a mechanical malfunction. Something about it felt wrong. Now, 5 days later, the train had reappeared. No explanation. No warning. It just sat there on the tracks at the Maple Street station like it never left. But it was all wrong. Frost coated the windows, thick and white, despite it being late summer. The metal of the train was ice cold to the touch, as if it had been dragged through the Arctic. And the passengers? Gone. Every last one of them. 27 people had boarded that train. Not a single soul had gotten off. Michael pulled his scarf tighter around his neck and stepped onto the platform. The air around the train felt colder than the night itself, like the thing was radiating frigidity. He stared up at the frost-covered door, hesitating for just a moment. He wasn't afraid of trains. No, trains weren't scary. What scared him was the silence, how the world around the train seemed muffled, like it existed in a bubble outside of reality. Even the faint hum of the city seemed to stop when he got close. He took a deep breath and climbed aboard. The first car was empty as expected. The seats were perfectly in place, no signs of a struggle, no blood, no discarded items. If you didn't know better, you'd think the train had simply been cleaned and forgotten about. But that wasn't right. Michael spotted a leather handbag sitting on one of the seats, the strap twisted like someone had dropped it in a hurry. A child's stuffed bunny lay in the aisle, one ear bent and frayed. A pair of glasses rested near the door, their lenses cracked. "Hello," Michael called out, his voice echoing through the car. It felt stupid, but he had to try. Maybe, just maybe, there'd be someone, anyone, left behind. But there was no reply, just that awful, suffocating silence. He moved further down the aisle, his boots crunching softly on the frost that had seeped in through the cracks in the doors and windows. The frost wasn't just outside, it had crept inside too, trailing along the walls and pooling in strange patterns on the ceiling. Michael reached out to touch one of the frosted windows and froze. There was something scratched into the glass. "Help us." The words weren't neat. They were jagged, desperate, like someone had clawed at the window with their nails. Michael's stomach turned. He'd seen plenty of weird things in his 20 years as a cop. But this was something else. He moved to the next window. More scratches. This time in shaky, uneven handwriting. Not alone. "What the hell?" Michael muttered, his breath fogging the air. The second car was worse. More belongings lay abandoned, scarves, hats, even a single shoe. The frost here was thicker, spreading across the floor like a creeping infection. And the writing on the windows wasn't just limited to a few desperate messages. It was everywhere. Cold. Darkness. Don't let it in. The words repeated over and over, scratched into glass, carved into seat cushions, even etched onto the metal walls. Michael stopped short when he saw the first handprint. It was small, like a child's, pressed into the frost on the window near the rear of the car. Just one handprint, perfectly preserved, but the fingers were too long, the palm too narrow. Michael blinked and stepped closer, inspecting it. It didn't look human, and then he heard it. A sound, faint, distant, but unmistakable, the scraping of metal on metal. It came from somewhere deeper in the train. Michael swallowed hard and forced himself to keep moving. The third car was darker. The lights flickered overhead, buzzing faintly, as though the train itself was struggling to stay alive. There were no belongings here, no signs of the passengers. Instead, the walls were covered in frost patterns that almost looked like faces distorted, screaming faces frozen mid-shriek. Michael shook his head, trying to convince himself it was just his imagination. The sound came again, closer this time. A metallic screech, like something sharp dragging along the floor. Michael's hand instinctively went to his gun. He didn't even know what he was expecting to find. A stray dog. A homeless squatter. But deep down, he knew better. As he moved toward the fourth car, the air grew colder. His breath came out in thick clouds, his fingers numb even through his gloves. The door to the next car was stuck, the frost sealing it shut. Michael braced himself and shoved it open with all his strength. That's when the lights went out. For a moment, there was nothing but darkness. Thick, suffocating darkness that wrapped around him like a living thing. Michael fumbled for his flashlight, his hands shaking as he clicked it on. The beam cut through the black, illuminating the frosted floor and the rows of empty seats. And then he saw it. A movement at the far end of the car. Something tall and thin, hunched low, its limbs impossibly long. It moved fast, darting between the seats like a spider. Michael's breath hitched as the beam of his flashlight caught its face, or what should have been its face. There were no eyes, no mouth. Just a smooth, pale surface, glistening like ice. Michael took a step back, his boots slipping on the frost. The thing stopped moving. It stood there, motionless, its head tilted as though it were listening. And then, in a voice that wasn't a voice at all, more like a vibration that rattled through his skull, it spoke. "You shouldn't be here." Michael ran. He didn't care about the investigation anymore. He didn't care about the frost or the abandoned belongings or the scratches on the windows. He just needed to get out. But as he sprinted back through the cars, he realized something horrifying. The train was no longer connected to the station. Through the windows, all he could see was darkness. No Maple Street station, no city lights. Just endless, suffocating black. The train began to move, and Michael realized, with a sinking dread, that he was no longer investigating the mystery of the vanishing train. He was part of it.